Hello chess friends, in this video I am going to be showing you
the greatest chess move of all time.
The craziest move I've ever seen in my life.
Probably the best thing I've ever seen.
Yes my friends, in this video everyone, well I should say everyone of note in the chess world whose opinion I could find online, will be weighing in with their thoughts on the question, what is the greatest chess move ever played? So we're going to get right into it with this first position mentioned by Grandmaster Simon Williams, where the legendary Frank Marshall with the black pieces finds what Williams calls the greatest chess move ever played. In this position, Marshall uncorks queen to g3. An incredible sacrifice. The queen can be taken three different ways with either of these pawns or the white queen, but every single move fails. Let's look at the pawn captures first. Those are the most obvious. H takes g3, we got knight to e2 check, mate. This king cannot go anywhere. How about f takes g3? You got knight e2 check, the king has to go to h1. Now rook takes f1 is checkmate. So the best option here is to take with the queen. I should mention that not taking the black queen is going to fail pretty quickly because there's a checkmate threat here. If the white rook moves away to try to give the king an escape square, that's not helping because then you have queen takes f2 check. It all leads to mate very quickly. So the best move is just to take the queen out with the queen. But here again we have knight e2 check, king h1, and after knight takes g3 check, this knight cannot be recaptured because if you take with the f-pawn, again, rook takes f1 is checkmate. You can't take with this pawn because it is pinned by this rook. So after you move the king, knight e2 check, king moves, and then the rook gets out of danger. With this move, rook to c3, protected by the knight, black is just a piece up and will go on to win this game. On to the next position, where a GM named Kismatulin finds a move with the white pieces here that Hikaru Nakamura calls the best thing he's ever seen. Now, did he mean the best thing in general? Or maybe we should assume it's just the best chess move he's ever seen. But either way, it is incredible. And it begins where Kismatulin plays queen to h8, allowing his opponent to come into c2 with the queen. He throws in this check, queen to f8 check, king goes to g5. And now there's the threat of queen takes d1, which will be checkmate. So he cannot take the rook on d6. But he has some options. He could play queen to e7 check, f4 check, giving his king an escape square. What would you play here as white? I don't think you would have played the insane move that Kismatulin found. He just coolly slides his king over here to g1, allowing the rook to be taken with check. So he's not going to get the rook on d6. This is a rook sacrifice. He's got to move his king. Now he has h2. But then rook takes c6. Despite the fact that black is a rook up here, he's totally lost because of the position of his black king. After queen takes f7. Threatens to come in here to f4. Check, which will lead to a mate. So rook f6 is what's played, blocking the queen's access to that square. There's f4 check. And now Kismatulin's opponent decides to just give up the rook. He plays king to h6. If you try to defend, king to f5, oops-a-daisy, queen d5 is checkmate. Not working. So he gives the rook back, but it's not helping. After queen takes f6, this king is severely short on squares. The engine is saying it's a mate in 9 at this point, and Kismatulin plays it perfectly. After queen to e2, apparently there's nothing better here. Queen to f8 check is how the mate begins. King to h5, and now this nice move, queen to g7. It keeps the black queen off of this diagonal, which could help defend apparently. It also threatens queen takes h6, which is checkmate. So black plays this h6 move, avoiding that checkmate, but then there's queen e5 check. You can see the king is getting driven towards the white pawns over here. After queen f6 check, okay, lets the king go back, but now the queen is on a more active post. And now there's f5 because we're threatening this. So the pawn's taken out, but now we got a mate in 4. Queen takes f5 check, king h4, queen to g6. And this queen can't really do much because you got to watch over the g4 square. So how are you going to prevent the mate? Queen takes h6. You play this. Now that's checkmate. So what's played, actually there's a resignation here somewhere. I don't know where the resignation is. But the engine's saying, you know, it doesn't really matter what you do because white's next move is queen takes h6 and your only move is to put your queen in the way and allow g3 checkmate. So that's just insane foresight to know at the moment where back here you play king g1, allowing your rook to be captured and just sacking the rook, knowing that this king would be able to be checkmated with the white queen with the help from the pawns. Truly mind-boggling to see that over the board. Next up, we have a position where Geller with the black pieces finds a crazy move, which is a favorite of Danny Wrench's of chess.com. He plays king to g7, the most counterintuitive move imaginable. You're leaving your rook undefended, the white king can capture it, your king is moving away from the action. What is the point of this? Well, to understand that, let's look at black's alternatives. What black would like to do is just run with this pawn and get a queen, right? It's going to be a little tricky for white to catch that pawn. But if black tries it right away, we got f takes e5 with check. White's going to pick up the rook, and then the rook's going to get behind the pawn. So this king can't be checked like that. You want to move the king. Let's say you go to e6. Now, after king takes e4, and you try to run with the pawn, rook g5 will save white because that's coming with check. So after a2, rook takes e5 check. Because it's a check, white will have time to get behind the pawn and stop it. What about king to f5? Let's look at that. Well, now rook g5 comes with check, so that when the king moves, we can take the rook. a3, rook takes e5, and now a2 can be stopped just in time by the rook on a5. So king g7 is simply the best way to avoid all these checks, and the threat is to just start pushing the pawn. If white takes the rook, a3, you can't stop that pawn. Let's look at alternatives. Obviously, if you take right here, there's just rook takes g4, that's not working. You can try to run and catch the pawn with the king, but here we have h5 from black, and once the rook moves, e takes f4, g takes f4, rook takes f4. Now the king is in time to stop this pawn, but unfortunately in this position, this pawn's going to be taken by black. Black's just going to have too many pawns. So that's just totally losing for white. So what's tried in the game is this move h5, allowing a3, and white just takes the rook knowing that this pawn can't be stopped. He hopes to build a fortress and be able to survive the rook versus queen endgame, which he doesn't survive. At this point, instead of king takes e4, if white were to try to run and catch the pawn, now this rook can get behind it with rook a4, and there's just nothing to be done. So that's simply an astounding move from black to find king g7, knowing it's the best square for the king. In this next position from 1998, Shirov with the black pieces finds the only winning move, a move that GM Daniel Naroditsky says he likes to stare at for hours as if it's a beautiful painting. That move is bishop to h3. What on earth? This looks like the worst move that you could make in this position, but it's the only winning move. There's a lot of specific variations I could talk about to prove this, but I'm just going to give you, in a nutshell, what this move accomplishes. Most importantly, it clears the f5 square for the black king to infiltrate. This is how black wants to guide this pawn in. The white king is going to have to get to e3 to oppose that plan. But there's a problem. He has to deal with this bishop first. There is no good way to deal with the bishop. If you just ignore it and start moving your king, by the time you get to e3, this pawn is undefended, the bishop will take it, and now black has 4 pawns versus your 1, and it doesn't matter that it's opposite colored bishops, you're going to lose this. So white is going to have to expend a tempo, either safeguarding this pawn with the move g3, or what's played in the game, g takes h3. And despite having this extra bishop, white is totally lost because the king is coming in too quickly. King to f5. And so king f2, king to e4. You don't have king e3 now. And this bishop is not going to be able to stop both of these passed pawns. I'll show you how it went down. Shirov even gives away the pawn on f6. It doesn't matter. These 2 pawns are unstoppable. d4 blocks the diagonal for the bishop to come in here. We got bishop e7 trying to watch over this square here so that pawn doesn't advance, but now you got king d3, bishop to c5, just trying to control both these pawns in some way. But after king c4, attacking the bishop, bishop here, king b3, now it's game over. You try to come in here with the king to help, now king c2. Uh-oh, look what's happening. Pawn's coming in. This bishop is going to need to watch over this d2 square. But after this, now you got a3. Oh no, double duty. You take that pawn, uh-oh. So one of the most stunning moves ever played. Bishop to h3, found by Shirov over the board against Veselin Topalov. This final position comes from a game between Diemer and Tromsdorf. It's an old game between two German players, but in this position, Black finds a move that Levi Rosman, aka Gotham Chess, calls the greatest chess move he's ever seen. So take a minute and look at this position. See if you can figure out what Black should play here. There's only one winning move. Okay, hopefully you saw that queen takes g4 is not working because of knight f6 check, winning the queen. That's no good. And white, is threatening to take the black queen and push some pawns. It's looking pretty scary for black. But the winning move here is this crazy looking b3 move. What? Okay, it's just a pawn move, but there's no good way to deal with it. Let's say white takes the queen, b takes a2. You can't stop black from getting a new queen. The king's only way out is going to be to take this knight, but doing that is going to run into rook e2 check, and the king just has to go back here, checkmate. The king has no good way to escape. So that rules out queen takes g5. What about c takes b3? Here there's knight takes b3 check. This is actually a checkmate in 10. You want to take the knight out on b3. If you don't, the knight b4 comes, bishop d3 comes in. There's too many pieces. The white king gets checkmated, so you take the knight. Now there's this beautiful rook c3. Double check with the queen and rook. Okay, so the king goes to b1, bishop d1 check, king goes to a2, knight b4 check, king to a3, and now rook to c6. If you take this knight on b4, then the queen will go to e7 and get involved. You'll get checkmated that way. If you don't, let's say you take out the queen, black doesn't need his queen. These two minor pieces in the rook deliver checkmate as follows. Knight c2 check, king here, rook a6 check, king to b1, rook a1 checkmate. So that's why c takes b3 is not working. Let's look at a3. Maybe this is better. Here, there's rook c3, threatening rook takes c2 mate. We can take out that rook, right? But now d takes c3. Look at these two pawns. b2 is a checkmate threat. There's no good way to deal with that. Taking out the pawn will be answered with bishop d3. Now you have no good way to stop knight takes b3 checkmate. If you try to move this rook so the king has a square, can run this way, knight takes b3 check, king d1, queen d2 checkmate. So a3 is not a good response. Let's look at what was played in the game. A takes b3. Now, apparently, knight b4 is a checkmate in 10, according to Stockfish. But what was played in the game is also winning. Knight takes b3 check. In the game, king b1 is played. If you take the knight like this, then again, rook c3 double check. This transposes with the line we already looked at with bishop d3 check. So after king to b1, now here, black goes wrong, which is kind of sad because b3 was such a brilliant move. But black throws away the win with this rook d3 move. Let's look at what should have been played. Knight d2 check. Now you have to take that knight with the rook. If you don't, then knight b4 comes, and depending on where the white king moved, it's either going to be knight a2 check or knight c2, and it's going to result in mate. So this is the best move, to take the knight, and then there's rook e1 check. If you move the king here, again, there's knight b4. This is going to lead to mate. There's just so many crazy lines. I can't even explore all of them. But rook d1, this is apparently the best defense. Letting the queen go, and then you do this fork here. But the problem is, with this fork here, you can't take the queen because, again, you get checkmated. Rook d1 check, and the rook and the minor pieces are going to deliver mate like this. Bishop c4 check, and then the king takes here. Rook a1, and there's going to be a5 checkmate. Oh. All the squares are covered for that white king. You can't stop that. So that was the winning line, knight d2. Instead, rook d3 throws away the win because here, white can actually draw with rook to f1. That's not what was played in the game. Instead, queen g1 defending the rook, which is a losing move. I should point out that if you take the rook, queen c1, this is going to mate very quickly. So let's look at the drawing move that could have been played. Rook to f1. The point to this is, getting the rook to f1 is after knight d2 check, king here, knight b4, you can take the queen because the rook had moved and you now have the d1 square. So this is not checkmate because the king can go to d1. That's kind of the point there. After queen g1 though, what was played in the game, now there's knight d2 check. The king goes here and the queen comes over here to get involved via a5. That's very bad. Knight f6 check was played, king c8. And now white plays rook takes d2. That was necessary because that knight was keeping an eye on the b1 square, so the king can't escape to b1 and then the queen's coming in and you're screwed. So you have to eliminate that knight. So after queen a5 check, you got king b1. And now we got knight b4. So here, white is lost and plays rook takes d3. If you play c takes d3, then this checkmate like that. So you have to take with the rook. After queen a2 check, king c1, you have this escape route. But here, black could have again finished off white by just playing queen to a1 check, and once the king moves, queen takes g1. Maybe black was worried about these advanced pawns, but if g7 is played, the queen doesn't even have to take that pawn. You can deliver mate like this. Queen f2 check, king d1, queen takes c2 here, knight takes d3 here, queen f2 mate. Okay, so that would have been the winning line. Just grab the queen. But instead, black played knight takes d3 check, and this actually allows white to get a winning position. After king d2, what's played in the game, queen to a5 check, white could have won here with c3. The point is, after black plays d takes c3, b takes c3, the king can get to e3 and escape this problem with queen to a2 check. The king can actually play to e3 and is safe here. But white throws away his chance to win. Instead of playing c3, plays king e2, and now the position's just a draw. There's a draw by repetition with knight e5 check, discovered check by the bishop, and the king can't go to e3. So that means the king has to go this way, but now the queen gets to come into d2. The king would be guarding that square on e3, but now the queen is infiltrating and a draw by repetition is made. So just an insane game. Maybe it's a little bit flawed because the player who played the brilliancy back here with b3 wasn't able to win. But still, to see that b3 was the right move there and play it, it's unbelievable. I don't know. Maybe there was some luck involved. I don't know. So that concludes my video on these chess moves, all of which are contenders for greatest chess move of all time. Let me know in the comments which move you liked the best. Now there's a couple honorable mentions that I previously made videos on. One is Kasparov's Immortal Rook Sacrifice from 1999. I'll put a link in the description for that if you want to check out my video reviewing that game. There's also an amazing move that I found in one of my own games in Postmortem Analysis with the engine. I'll also provide links for the videos by Levi Rosman, Hikaru Nakamura, and Simon Williams, where they talked about the moves that they considered to be the greatest. If you want to see a little more in-depth analysis, check those out. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel for more of this kind of content coming soon.